All right, I think we're going to go ahead and get started. So, welcome. I am Monica Carey. I am the Pennsylvania Program Director for Solar United Neighbors. Hi, Wendy. Welcome. Thank you. Um, so, tonight is our very first Solar 101 for the Cumberland Dauphin Solar Co-op. And I'm going to talk all about what the co-op is, how it works, as well as some of the fundamentals of solar. So let's go ahead and get started. Excellent. Okay. So I want to start by thanking our partners for this co-op. These are really amazing organizations that we work with who, you may have heard about the co-op through them, but this round, we're working with the Derry Township Climate Change Advisory Committee, as well as the Derry EAC, the Environmental Action Committee. And we're also partnering with Move Past Plastic. And so I just want to thank our wonderful partners for working with us. And maybe to start, I will begin by telling you a little bit about Solar United Neighbors. So we are a vendor-neutral national 501c3 organization. We're a nonprofit, so we are not a solar installer, and in fact, we are vendor-neutral. But what we do is education, advocacy, and community organizing around mainly solar, rooftop solar, which does include ground-mounted solar, and really the benefits of how it impacts everybody who goes solar and who doesn't. So Sun actually got started in 2007. This is our founder, Anya, right over here. And so she helped her neighborhood of Mount Pleasant in Washington, D.C. go solar. There were about 50 homes that all went solar at the same time. And they discovered through that process that solar can actually be a really intimidating process. It's expensive, it is a long-term investment, and there's a lot of technology as well as kind of legal language to understand when you go solar. So by pooling their resources, they were actually able to save money as well as rely on each other through this, sometimes difficult process. And that really became the model for how Sun works. So you can see down at the bottom, we have grown. We are now, we have members in all 50 states. We have programs in 11 states, as well as Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico. And we've launched and run over 400 co-ops at this point, helping more than 9,000 people go solar through our work. And here in Pennsylvania, we've been around since 2018, and we've helped 195 people go solar through our co-ops. You can see some of our other numbers there. We're very proud of them, but it's really exciting to think about what the future of solar in Pennsylvania looks like. We're at a really exciting point for solar in general. You've probably heard about the Inflation Reduction Act, some tax credits, things like that. So it's just very exciting time, a really good time to go solar. So I'm very excited for the future. So today's presentation is going to be in 3 parts. We're going to talk about how the solar co-ops work. Then we'll talk about solar technology, really the nuts and bolts of how solar tech works and how it works with your house. And then finally, we're going to touch on solar economics and the financials of going solar. So I'm going to stop at the end of each of those sections. And if you have questions, you're welcome to put them in the chat, but we can also be pretty informal tonight. So at the end, if you want to raise your hand and come off mute, we'll be able to have a conversation about any questions that you have that come up. All right. So first is the solar co-op. You've heard me talk about how many people we've helped go solar through the co-op, how many co-ops we've run, but what is a solar co-op? So a co-op is when a large group of homeowners, nonprofits, and small businesses get to go solar all at the same time through a single solar installer. By doing that, they get a discounted rate because it's a bulk purchase. But then we at Sun, we're there to provide the consumer advocacy, technical guidance and expertise, and answer any questions that you have. We do liaising with the installer to help make sure that you have a good process, a smooth process going solar. And we think that the co-op is really a fantastic model for actually helping people go solar. It just makes it a lot easier. It also, as I said, it gives you a good value on installation. We'll talk in the last section about what that value is. But you get support from not just from Sun, but also from your fellow co-op members, people who are going solar at the same time as you. You get to connect with those people who are maybe in your neighborhood, maybe in your area that you never knew before, and become part of that growing solar movement that I was talking about. So everyone who joins the co-op is able to get a free customized quote for solar, for battery backup, or for a level 2 EV charger, and you can get a quote for any one or combination of those things. So this is our timeline for the co-op process. It's of course going to change a little bit depending on the specifics of the co-op, but this is a good kind of general guideline for how things will go. So we launched just, is it last week already, on August 12th. And you are here, you are at the learn step where you're attending our free info session. Now, at this point, you are welcome to join as a co-op member. So joining a co-op is completely free and there is no obligation to go solar, and there's no obligation to go solar with the co-op installer. This is really an opportunity for you to learn about going solar in an environment where you can receive that consumer protection and technical guidance along the way. And then what we try to do along with our partners, and we ask co-op members to do this too, is spread the word about the co-op. The more people who join, the juicier a prize it looks to be for the installers. Now, why is that important? So once we get about 30 co-op members, we'll move into what's called the installer selection process. So at that point, we will issue a competitive request for proposals for installers that service the area. They will bid competitively to try to win this co-op. So that's what I mean by the more people that are part of the co-op, the better a prize it looks to be for the installer, which means they'll bid even more competitively, saving you money. Once they've bid, we review those bids and check references. And we'll also do some other light vetting, make sure that they're properly licensed and insured to operate in Pennsylvania. And then a group of co-op members actually volunteer, and in one night, they review all of those bids from the installers, and they choose a single installer to service the co-op. So at that point, the installer is going to start reaching out to all of those co-op members, and they'll be able to provide a free customized proposal that is specific to you and your energy needs, your budget, kind of all of those components. And the last opportunity folks will have to join is in February of next year, at which point we'll start getting folks to actually sign a contract. So if you, up to this point in the process, if you leave the co-op or you decide now is not a good time for me to go solar, that is absolutely fine. You've learned about going solar, you've gotten your proposal, you are now better educated and have a good understanding of what it is to go solar. But after that point, you would sign a contract that will be between you and the installer, because this is going to be a system that you own. And then the installer is going to start the process of getting permitting. They'll do interconnection applications to your utility, and then it'll be the installation itself. And then a few months after you've signed your contract will be your actual installation. And then usually a month or two after that, we try to have a celebration so that we can see all of the solar that's been installed in the area through the co-op. All the co-op members can come out, meet each other, meet the partners. It's just a really cool opportunity to see all of the technology that's been installed in the area. And so I wanted to drill down a little bit on this question about who picks the installer. So it is very important. We at Sun, we are facilitating the process, but I'm not getting solar through this co-op. The co-op members are. So you are the ones who would choose the installer. And then when you join the co-op, you actually will fill out a form that includes, your name, contact information, address, so that we can see your roof and get an idea of whether or not you're a good fit for solar. But then you'll also include information about what you prioritize when choosing an installer. So if you think about if you were going to go out and choose a contractor, it is not always the best idea to just go with the cheapest option. Sometimes that there is a reason that they are the cheapest. So we think about this from a very holistic perspective. Is price is very important, but what are some of the other things that are important to you as well? Is it their experience? Is it that they're a local installer? The length of their warranties? There are lots of different pieces, but we compile all of the priorities of each of the co-op members and provide them to the selection committee, and that's how they choose the installer. It's the company that is going to best suit the needs of as many of the co-op members as possible. So I actually wanted to see if anyone was interested in joining our selection committee. So we don't know the timing just yet, but if this is something that you might be interested in, you can go ahead and answer the poll that should be on your screen. We can just tell you more about it, but it's really important to have folks join the selection committee because they're going to be the ones who actually choose the installer. For some people, that is not what they're interested in. They would like to defer that to other co-op members. And for some people, that's really exciting to them. Maybe you're an engineer and you love looking at contractor proposals. Well, we would love to have you join the selection committee. So I'm going to give this another couple of seconds and see if anybody can respond to it. And again, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or raise your hand. Okay. Close out of that. So are there any questions? Not seeing any in the chat, but please don't be shy. I know I can talk fast, so if you have trouble hearing me, please let me know. Yes, any questions? If not, then I am going to go ahead and move on into the solar technology portion. Okay, so tonight, when I'm saying solar, I think it's important to mention that solar is really, okay. Thank you, Wendy. Thanks for letting me know. So when I talk about solar, I'm using solar as a shorthand, really saying solar photovoltaics. So solar PV is the technology that takes sunlight and converts it into electricity. So at the heart of solar is the solar cell. And you see that over here on the left, it's these little blue squares. And in solar technology, that is still silicon is the most predominant solar technology that we see. Everything else in the solar panel is really there to protect those solar cells since they do all the work. Everything else is there to make sure that the solar panels can exist outside under the elements and live out there for 25 years. So you've got tempered glass, a polymer encapsulant, an aluminum frame. So the solar cells are secure and well sealed. When you string up a series of solar modules, you have what's called a solar array. And this is what would be installed on your roof, a solar array. So at this point, it's really helpful to talk about a solar array in terms of size, or a kilowatt, which is a measure of power. And a kilowatt is 1,000 watts. So if we look at the example at the bottom, we have 12 solar panels that are each 350 watts. So a panel is going to have a different wattage associated with it, very similar to a light bulb. But that's why you want to be specific about the wattage of your panel, because it is going to change the size of your array. So 12 of those 350 watt panels will end up being a 4,200 watt array, or a 4.2 kilowatt array. So for reference, the average sized residential system that we see for co-op members in Pennsylvania is somewhere between 4 and 15 kilowatts. And really, you can size it however you want. It's going to be based on how much roof space you have, what your budget is. Do you want to cover 100% of your annual energy usage, or do you want to cover less than that? Maybe you're thinking about electrifying some appliances in your home, so you actually want to cover more than 100%. And then the other piece is that a watt is a measure of power. It's instantaneous. But if you elongate a watt over time, you got a kilowatt hour, which is electricity or energy production. And you're probably used to seeing kilowatt hours on your electric bill. When it comes to actually attaching the panels to your home, there are a few different options depending on the type of roof that you have. So off on the left is your kind of graded asphalt or composite shingle roof. In that case, the installer is going to drill a hole through your roof down to the rafters, and they're going to make sure that that connection is really secure. You don't want these things moving around. And then around the penetration point, they're going to use a silicone sealant, as well as this metal flashing. So it's a sheet of metal. It's actually wedged up under the next row of shingles. And that's really there to make sure that your penetration point is completely waterproof and you're not going to get any leaks. Then on the right, the other type of roof you might have is a metal roof. So in this case, this is a standing seam metal roof, which can also be pretty popular. In this case, it's actually really nice because you would clamp the panels directly to the standing seams, and you don't have to drill any holes through the roof at all, which is fantastic. And then there are a few other different types of roofs. So different roofs have different solutions for them, but not every installer offers every type of racking. So it can depend. But one of the nice things about joining the co-op is you find out up front whether or not the installer has a solution for your type of roof. That way it's not a surprise as you're going through the process. When you're thinking about going solar and putting it on your roof, there are really 4 criteria for whether or not your roof is a good fit for solar. So the first is, we are in the northern hemisphere. You want the panels to be facing the sun. So they have to be facing in a south-ish direction. And they can really go anywhere from due east to due west. We just don't recommend that they face northward. Secondly, again, you want them to see the sun. So solar panels and the surrounding technology are able to handle some shading, but ideally you want to make sure that there are no obstructions from nearby trees, buildings, if you've got a chimney, things like that. And then third is, you do have to have enough space to mount the panels, so it's contiguous space. And the industry standard is kind of a minimum 250 square feet. That's about the smallest size system that they'll do. And you want it to be contiguous because every time there is an interruption that gets introduced, maybe a dormer, a chimney, a vent, that actually introduces inefficiencies to your system. So to maximize efficiency, you want it to be contiguous. And then finally, you do also want to have a new-ish, undamaged roof. And this is important because if you think about maximizing your investment, you want to be able to put the solar up on your roof and then just leave it there until the end of life. So solar systems last 25 years. So ideally, your roof, if it's a shingle roof, would be less than 10 years old. If you have a metal roof, those have 50-year lifetimes, so you do have a little bit more leeway there. And then if you don't have the roof space or the right roof direction for going solar there, and you do have space for a ground-mounted system, that is always an option. There are pros and cons for ground-mounted systems compared to a roof-mounted system. So some of the pros to the to the ground mounted system is that you are not limited by the pitch and orientation of your roof. You can actually maximize the angle and direction of your solar panels so that they collect as much sunlight throughout the day as possible. The other really nice thing about it is that you can see all of this airflow around the panels that you wouldn't see if they were attached to the roof really closely. That airflow actually cools down the panels and causes them to be more efficient. So those are some really great benefits to a ground-mounted system. Some of the main downside to a ground-mounted system is that it does tend to cost more. That is because you have to build all of that scaffolding. You have to pour concrete to make sure that it's really stable. And then oftentimes you also have to do trenching to bury the power lines so that you're actually carrying the power from the panels back to your house. So all of that adds cost. So solar panels absorb sunlight, and then they produce what's called direct current, or DC. Your home actually runs on alternating current, or AC. So you need an inverter to switch from DC to AC to make that power usable. Now, the inverter does a few other things. One is it actually is the computerized brain of your system. So it's going to be at any given moment during the day doing calculations to make sure that it's optimizing the efficiency of your panel. The third thing that it does is it connects to the internet. So you will have monitoring software on your phone or your laptop, so you can go on and see how your system's producing during the day. And I find that solar homeowners love pulling out their monitoring software and checking and seeing, oh, I know where the sun is because this panel's getting more shade than this one over here. So that's a very cool part of solar. So there are a few different options for inverters. I'm not going to go through them because it's not super important that you understand really well the difference between all of them. But just know that a lot of installers, it's kind of like Pepsi and Coke. They have their preferences and they want to stick to that. The big difference, though, really is between this top set and the bottom. So these two options are going to be offered for rooftop systems, and the bottom, just the string inverter, that's going to be mainly offered for ground mounted systems. So that's kind of where you would see those differences. And then after the inverter switches your power to AC, that is going to feed directly into your electrical panel. It's going into that general energy mix. It's a really simple connection, and most newer homes and homes with larger panels actually don't need any kind of upgrade. But if you have an older home or a smaller panel, you may need an upgrade or a sub panel added. But again, that's a really nice part of being in the co-op, is you can get pricing for what that would cost at the very beginning. So it's not a surprise at the 11th hour. All right, and now I want to just take a moment to show you how all of that technology combines into a single system and how it interacts with your house. So on a beautiful sunny day like today, your panels would be soaking up sunlight, and they're going to be generating direct current that will go into your inverter and be switched into alternating current, which then feeds into the general energy mix in your electrical panel. And then anything that you're running in your home, that energy is going to go in and power it directly. If you have some left over, this is the part that is now going to be new. So your utility meter will actually be swapped out, and you'll have a bi-directional meter. And you can see that this home is still tied to the grid. We see that that is still the most cost-effective and the most common way of going solar. So it's helpful here to talk about a concept called net metering. So if you, especially in the summer, you might be generating a lot more energy than you're actually using in your home. At that point, that energy can now flow out to the grid through that bidirectional meter. But at night, because you're still grid tied, you'd be pulling in energy from the grid. That way you're not without power. I know people have questions about that because the sun's only out during the day, but as a grid-tied system, you would still be receiving power at night or if it's cloudy outside. When you're overproducing, particularly in the summer, your utility actually has this accounting mechanism called net metering, where they will give you a credit for all of the kilowatt hours that you export to the grid. And they will credit you 1-to-1 for every kilowatt hour at full retail rate. That is incredible. That's them saying your solar energy is of equal value to the energy that we sell you. And so the way you see net metering is on your electric bill. So unfortunately, I don't have any bills from MET-Ed or PPL. This one is from Penelec, so maybe a couple of you are in Penelec territory, but I do think it's a really good example of how net metering would appear on someone's bill. And this is a really good example of the scale of net metering. So this customer is a solar customer. The bill is for February to March, so not the sunniest of months, but at the beginning of the month, they had a bank of kilowatt hours. So these are all the credited kilowatt hours that they had received up to this point of the year. This is 1,135 kilowatt hours. So this month, they took from the grid 725 kilowatt hours. From their solar system, they sent to the grid 718 kilowatt hours. So that was a net loss, or I guess, net take from the grid of 7 kilowatt hours, which means that their banked kilowatt hours, they actually spent those down. And you can see that those got reduced from 1,135 to 1,128. So if you think about, in the summer, you're overproducing energy, and then you're getting those extra kilowatt hours added to a bank on your bill. Those banked kilowatt hours are going to roll over month to month. And you can see by February, they had 1,100, but even from February to March, they only had to spend down their bank by 7 kilowatt hours. That's really incredible. So ultimately, the way this works is their bill had started at about $100, and they basically took their bill from $100 down to $10. And that is because that last $10 is their fixed customer charge. For every utility, it's a little bit different. It's usually somewhere between like $10 and $25. You will still be paying that. But this customer spent nothing else on energy this month. So that's what we mean when we say that solar pays for itself. Now, net metering can get technical and complicated quickly. The main thing to remember is that it does roll over your credits month to month at that retail rate. Now, that is only true from June 1st until May 31st. That is your annual billing cycle. At May 31st, any excess kilowatt hours that you have credited in your bank are going to be credited at the lower price to compare. So in general, we recommend that you size your system to be only 100% of your annual energy usage. Any more than that, and you're going to be seeing diminishing returns. When you're looking at whether or not your utility is net metering you properly. And I have to tell you, that is one of the most common questions that we get at Solar United Neighbors. It is a difficult question to answer because there are lots of different things happening with your energy in your home. So first, there is the energy that you're producing at your solar system. There's the amount of energy that you are consuming within your home, the amount of energy that you're exporting to the grid, and the amount of energy that you're taking in from your utility. So that's 4 pieces of information, and you need to know what's happening for every single one of those in order to have a complete picture of what's going on with your energy. So with the monitoring system, you would be able to get insight into your consumption within the house, as well as the total amount of energy that you're producing. And then your utility is going to be paying attention to how much energy you export and import. The consumption meter is, well, we've seen it come preloaded into some inverters, so it may not have any additional cost. In other cases, an installer can add it at the time of installation, and it's only an additional $200 to $600. The benefit of it is that you have that complete picture of what's going on with your system. So this is an example of the monitoring software. In this case, you can see in blue the amount of solar that was produced during the day. So you can see the amount rising with the sun and then going away around sunset. And then in orange is how much energy is actually being used in the home during the day. So nothing really being used until about 2 o'clock. All of that energy here is going to be exported to the grid. At this point, you're going to start consuming your energy on site. There's still a little bit extra that might be exported to the grid. And then once the sun goes away, all of this energy is going to be coming straight from the grid because you're not generating anymore. So with this information, you would be able to know whether or not you're getting the full compensation or the full crediting for net metering that you are owed. So that's all the solar technology. I want to switch gears and talk a little bit about the other offerings with the solar co-op. So first is the electric vehicle charger. So with the co-op, you can get pricing for the installation of a level 2 EV charger. And a lot of people really prefer to pair an EV charger with solar because they can see where their fuel is coming from, and that's their roof. And it really helps to drive down costs for driving. Sorry for all the puns, really not trying that. But so in this instance, what you can see is that, if you think about how you pay for solar, it is a set cost that you pay over the lifetime. It's not going to increase as your system ages. But that's not true for your utilities. We know that electric rates go up all the time. So in orange, you can see the cost of grid energy rises over the 25 years of the solar system. Whereas in blue is that levelized cost of solar, where it's not rising at all. That means that how much it's going to cost for you to fill up your tank at year 0 and at year 25. You cannot get that kind of sustainability from fossil fuels. So at the bottom, I also included an example of how much you can save by powering your car with solar. So on the left is a traditional gas-powered car, and I took an SUV for an example and assumed 13,500 miles per year. That's kind of average, with a 30 mile per gallon fuel economy. At the time, it was about 360 per gallon, and that would yield $1,600 on gas each year. For an electric vehicle that's powered by solar, the same type of car is going to use 28 kilowatt hours per 100 miles, and the cost of electricity is about 15 cents per kilowatt hour. So at that rate, this homeowner is going to be spending $567 on fuel per year. So a third of what you would spend with a gas-powered car. Now, to talk about the difference between a level 1 and a level 2 electric vehicle charger, if you're not familiar, when you buy an EV, it comes with a level 1 EV charger. That's just a plug that goes into a standard 120 volt outlet. It is a much slower charging speed, maybe 4 to 6 miles of charge per hour. So like I said, very slow. But the level 2 is a faster charger. It does require an outlet upgrade to that 240 volt outlet, but you get much faster charging speeds, somewhere in the 10 to 30 miles of charge per hour. And these chargers also come with a 3-year warranty. And then the final component I wanted to talk about was batteries or storage. So we know that we're seeing more and more weather events causing electricity interruptions. And so the dark blue is kind of just standard electric outages in the US, and the light blue is with those kind of major natural disasters. So they are increasing dramatically. When you have solar, a lot of people think if my neighborhood loses power, if the sun is out, I'm going to be fine. My home will still have power. And that is not true because of a safety mechanism. So if you think about, if your system is generating electricity, but everybody else's power is down, your system could be back feeding power into the line. If somebody goes out to work on the line, then they could be electrocuted. So if the power goes out in your neighborhood, you will also lose power. That's really important to remember. If you have really critical equipment, like medical equipment, it's important for you to have powered during an outage, then batteries would be a good option for keeping the power during those outages. So The other thing is if you experience really frequent outages or very long outages in the winter, if you're losing power for 3-4 days at a time, battery backup could definitely benefit you. Because batteries are still very expensive, we tend to recommend that you only buy them if one of these kind of situations applies to you. Otherwise, it really is a kind of cost benefit analysis. But if you're interested in storage, want to know more about it, we have a guide on our website, solarunitedneighbors.org/storage. There is also a webinar that we have. I think it's also linked on that page, but it's also on our YouTube. So you can learn lots more about how storage works, how it interacts with your solar system, things to be thinking about as you're talking to an installer if you're considering getting a battery installed. So just really great resource. And then I'm going to pause after this slide. So if you have questions, please drop them in the chat. But I'm just going to wrap this section with some of our frequently asked questions. So when you're looking at going solar, there are 3 main warranties that you will be shown from an installer. So the first is the installer's warranty or a workmanship warranty. So this is going to cover any damage done to your home during installation. It would also cover things like leaks from the roof penetration. And it varies widely from installer to installer. I've seen 1-year warranty and I've seen 25-year warranty. If you think about what this warranty is actually covering, that's all damage that you're likely to see immediately or within the first couple of months. You're not likely to notice a roof leak from installation at year 7. So in a lot of instances, I would say, if you see a very long workmanship warranty, I would say over 10 years, you may eye it with some skepticism as to its actual value. The second type of warranty is a manufacturer's warranty, the product warranty for the specific equipment. So the panels will have typically a 25-year warranty. Some of them now have only a 12.5-year warranty. And then inverters have generally a 10 to 15-year warranty. And then the final warranty you'll see is called a power production warranty. So this is going to be from the manufacturer and specific to the panel. It's going to say your panel will degrade in efficiency over the lifetime, over the 25 years, but we are going to ensure that, it's not going to degrade in efficiency too much. So the way they phrase these warranties would be something like, it'll lose 2% efficiency the first year, and then no more than 0.5% efficiency every year after that. Or they'll say by year 25, it will be operating with 85% efficiency, something like that. So that's a really great metric for comparing 2 separate panels to each other. Okay, second, so maintenance is actually one of the best parts of solar. It is a silent system, no moving parts, and actually very, very low maintenance. You do not have to get up there and wash off pollen or dust. You don't have to scrape off snow. The rain and snow actually slide off of the panels in a lot of cases, and clean the panels. So there are really no benefits to you getting up there with your Windex and squeegee. We do recommend that after about 5 years, you have somebody come check, make sure that everything's still looking good, and your installer can help you find somebody to do that. And then solar systems last 25 years. That's really how long most panels are warranted for and how long they're expected to last. So this is a long-term investment. If you're thinking about moving in the near future, it may not be the right time for you to go solar, but we do know that solar adds value to your property. So you may also be able to recoup some of your investment on sale. With the co-op, you are the owner of your system. You are the one who signs the contract with the installer. The co-op is simply a mechanism for you to get a good competitive rate by going solar. And finally, if you are in a homeowners association or a historic district, you just want to let your installer know from the outset, because this can involve more applications for permits, and they may need to do a little bit more education depending on if your HOA is familiar with solar. And if you have any questions or concerns throughout the process, please do reach out to us. We have lots of resources for helping you kind of navigate this process. So I'm going to pause here and see what questions there are. Okay, so the first question, does this program, or is this program for outright purchase of solar, or does it also include leasing systems? So this is a great question. As of right now, I do not know if leases will be available to co-op members, simply because we haven't gone through the request for proposals yet. No installers have bid yet, so I don't know the details of those systems. But in general, every system that I know of in Pennsylvania from a co-op member has been an outright purchase. In some cases, there's also financing, and I'm going to talk about that in the next section. So you could finance through your bank or some other lender, but it's been an outright ownership model, not a lease model. So I hope that helps answer that question. Your roof has a couple more years on it. Will there be other co-op bids in the future? So, as of right now, we do not have another plan for a future Cumberland Dauphin co-op. If the co-op goes well, we could very well come back. It's just that we don't have anything set right now. We only really plan out for the next year or so. But if your roof has more time left on it, which is great, then yes, I would recommend going through this process once you're ready to replace your roof. And we do lots of other services for free, just to kind of help you understand the process and feel confident with whatever decision you make. So one of the services we have is called a help desk, and they'll actually help you look over a proposal from any installers, make sure that you understand the terms and like all the technology. So that could be a good option for you, if the co-op is not a good, if it's not a good time for you to go solar through the co-op. Okay. And then I previously entered my address into your website and the results were that my house was not appropriate for solar. Would those results change as part of the co-op because of the lower cost for the system? That is an interesting question. So for anybody who hasn't done this already, basically when you join the co-op, you're going to give us your address and we do a solar suitability remote roof review. And that's really using satellite imaging, and checking the location that you sent us to make sure that your roof meets those criteria that I mentioned before. So my guess is that when you received the email saying that your home was not suitable for solar, I believe they tell you because of shading, or because of, sometimes they'll say like roof condition or orientation, something like that. So that can give you the best indication of why your roof may not be suitable for solar. I will tell you, we are doing kind of an ad hoc review of your home with the best tools that we have. The installers are going to be much better at giving a roof review because they've got very sophisticated shading analysis tools. They really understand kind of the landscape in your area for solar absorption. So it may it may be okay to continue through the co-op and get a second opinion from an installer, or to go to another installer entirely and ask them for their opinion. You just also want to look to see how much of your annual energy usage you would be able to offset given your roof structure. You just want to make sure that they're not trying to sell you a system where you're only going to be offsetting 20% because you have so much shade. It's just that kind of balance. And again, that's a good place for our help desk to help out. And I'm going to put in the website for that because they have great resources. And you can ask questions and schedule phone calls at your convenience to ask all your questions. So I hope that answered those questions. Feel free to offer more questions if you have them, or to add any extra context if you think I missed something. Okay, we're gonna wrap up with our final section, which is solar economics. So the cost of solar has come down astronomically since even within the last decade, let alone since it first came onto the market in the 1970s. We've seen costs drop 65 cents since, or 65% since 2010. And solar is really, the cost of it is becoming much more accessible to lots of different families, not just the ones who are the wealthiest in the neighborhood. And solar is such a good return on your investment. The way I was showing you the net metering on your bill, lots of people would want to save hundreds of dollars over the course of, a year on their electric bills. Solar helps you save money. The co-op can also help you save money in going solar. That's something that I've told you a couple of times. So the reason that a co-op can help you save money is because we are taking a large group. Our goal for this group is 100 people who all want to go solar. We're taking them to the installer and saying, here's this group of highly motivated, highly educated homeowners interested in going solar. The installers are able to bulk purchase their materials, the inverters, the panels, racking, all of that. They're also able to save money on sales and marketing, customer acquisition, and all of that savings that they get to make, they pass along to the co-op members. So we can't say definitively you are going to save X% on solar by going through the co-op. And that's simply because we don't choose the installer and we don't know how the installers are going to bid. What I can tell you is that we have looked at how much the co-op members have saved across the country over the last 15 years. And on average, co-op members save between 10 and 15% compared to market rate customers. So that's 10 to 15% you could save off the top of a system, and then you start seeing your savings. So this is our pricing table, and I'm going to mainly focus on this column because this is for the average residential sized system in Pennsylvania. But these savings are going to scale with size. So in the first row, we have our average Pennsylvania co-op solar pricing. And so this is the $270 per watt. That's kind of the easiest way to talk about the price of solar. So in this case, your sticker price is going to be $27,000. If you can take the federal tax credit, that is a 30% tax credit. So you would be able to reduce the cost by $8,000. And then your net cost is going to be just about $19,000. Now, every year, you're going to be saving money on electricity, the way I showed you with that PP or Penelec bill earlier. So in this, the case of the 10 kilowatt system, you would be saving about $1,700 in year one. Now, those savings are going to be cumulative. Every year, you're going to be saving money. And if you think about it, every time the utility bumps up their electric rates, your solar is actually valued at that same retail rate. So the value of your electricity that you're generating increases over time, even as your system is getting less efficient. So by year 10, you would have saved almost $18,000. And over the course of 25 years, you'd be at $50,000 in electricity savings. So by the end, you'd actually see a net profit of more than or almost twice what you spent in the first place. And there is another source of revenue that is associated with solar, and this is called the Solar Renewable Energy Credit, or an SREC. Basically, every time you generate and export 1,000 kilowatt hours or 1 megawatt hour, you get a credit, an SREC, that then is bought and sold on a market. And this basically goes to utilities. They pay for these credits so that they can say that they're procuring energy from solar, from a renewable source. And so since it's bought and sold on a market, that value is variable. We have run an estimate here just for the first 5 years, because anything after that, you can't really tell what it's going to be. Right now, it's around $35 per SREC. So for that first 5 years, you'd see additional income of about $1,800. Now, I think it's important to kind of drill down on the tax credit. So this is an investment tax credit. It's worth 30%. So if you were to go solar this year, next year on your taxes, you would be able to reduce your taxes by 30% of the cost of going solar. And if you don't have the full tax appetite to take that 30%, you can roll over the tax credit. I believe it's for up to 5 years, but for anything relating to the tax credit, we highly recommend that you talk to a tax professional and get a second opinion. The nice thing about the 30% tax credit is that it is extended out to 2032. So you can be sure that no time soon is that tax credit going away. And then I mentioned before that there are a few different ways to pay for the system. So here I'm not including leases, but first is the cash option. So this is the highest upfront cost, but it does maximize savings. Everything after that is going to just be savings on your electric bill. Second, there is a grant program that is from the USDA. It's called Rural Energy for America Program, or REAP. And this is a very cool program. They will give you a grant for up to 50% of the cost of going solar that you can stack with the tax credit. So you could actually take off 80% of the cost of going solar. This grant is available for farmers, agricultural producers, and rural small businesses. And if you have questions about that, I am happy to answer questions. We have a whole REAP guide because it's such a great opportunity, and we find that a lot of folks just don't know about it at all. And then finally, there are going to be a lot of loans available to homeowners for going solar. So I'm going to highly recommend this page down here at the bottom. So this is solarunitedneighbors.org/financing. So many good resources on this page. But essentially what it comes down to is There are going to be lots of different loan products, different ways that you can finance a system. We see the most common is the home equity line of credit, but the installers often offer their own financing through a third party company. And then as a co-op member, you would also have access to loans from the Clean Energy Credit Union or Community First Credit Union. And these are they're good loans. They've got really low interest rates. But really with any type of financing product, you just want to compare terms so that you understand, are you going to be net cash positive right away? Is it, what are your goals really with financing? So here we have an example. It's the same two systems that I showed before, the 5 kilowatt and the 10 kilowatt system. And then we've got two loan types. One is a 10-year loan and one is a 15-year loan. In both cases, we're looking at a home equity line of credit with a 4% interest rate, where you take 30% down and then take the tax credit. And in this case, the 15-year loan, you see that there is a net monthly payment of $0, but it is a 15-year payback period, whereas the 10 years loan is going to be a $51 net monthly payment, but your payback is 10 years. And in both cases, you can see the net profit is less than with the cash option. That's always going to be true. So really, it's just about comparing loan terms and understanding if you're looking for a lower monthly payment versus lower total interest paid. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about the EV charger costs, just so you have kind of an idea of what to expect for that. So the charging unit itself, I've seen somewhere between $500 up to maybe $1,000, maybe a little bit more. The installation, because it does require the electrical work to upgrade the outlet, can be somewhere between $500 to $2,000. And so your total cost, you're looking at somewhere between $1,000 and I've seen up to $4,500. And that may include drywall work if you need that. But basically, anytime you add length between where the charger is and where like your car is going to be or where the outlet is, that length is all copper wire, which is really expensive. So that's kind of one way to make sure that you're minimizing costs, is to make sure that everything's kind of close together. And then there are EV charger incentives available. There are federal, state, and sometimes local incentives to buy electric vehicles, as well as incentives for buying the EV charger. So we do have information about that on the co-op webpage. So that's down here. And I am going to show that, I think, yep, perfect, on this page. So this is our co-op webpage, if you haven't seen it yet. And I'm putting the address in the chat. So when you want to join the co-op, and I hope you do, you will come to this page and be able to join the co-op from here. There is also a lot of information. So if you scroll over, you'll be able to see EV information, and that's where it's going to include what I was just talking about the different incentives available for EVs and EV chargers. I also recommend checking out this page because it includes those cost and financing tables that I showed you, as well as updates and events that I can share with you. So we actually have an event next week. This is going to be next Tuesday, August 27th at 6:30 p.m. at the Sturgis Speakeasy in Harrisburg. So I invite all of you to come, bring a friend. There's going to be beer and other drinks, food, and just an opportunity to get to meet each other and talk about solar. So I'm putting It didn't really do it. But if you go to that site or to the events tab on our co-op webpage, you'll be able to register to join us at the happy hour. And I do hope to see you there. It's just going to be a nice opportunity to get to meet each other. And if you have questions about the co-op, I will be there and happy to chat. And then finally, I wanted to offer, go back. Here we go. I want to put up another poll. We're looking for volunteers to help us spread the word about the co-op. Remember, this is how we get a good bid from installers on the co-op. And there are lots of different ways that you can help us. It could be as simple as putting out a yard sign, or maybe sharing the recording of this webinar with a friend or a family member. We have lots of different ways to get involved. So if you're interested in helping spread more solar in Cumberland and Dauphin counties, please respond to the poll and we will let you know how you can get involved. And then this is pretty much the end of the presentation. So I'm going to see if anybody has any final questions. Go ahead and put them in the chat or raise your hand and I'll help you come off mute and we can discuss your questions. Okay. Any final questions? Just going to go to this last page. Again, this is our co-op website. And then that is our email address. That goes to me and the rest of our Pennsylvania team. So if you have any questions about going solar, please do let us know. Thank you so much, Wendy. Thank you for being here tonight. I really appreciate it. And thank you for all your questions. Do not hesitate to reach out if you have questions in the future. And I am going to stop. All right. Thank you all so much and have a great night. Bye.